Hey Painty Peeps! So today we are doing color swatching mixing chart using Debbie's DIY chalk paint, and I have 6 colors. Okay, so I've got the Black Velvet, I have the White Swan, Farm Fresh, Hay Sailor, Queen Bee, and Marquee. And as you know, I like trying to do these charts using the primaries because I think a lot of you guys, when you buy paint, end up having this sit on your shelves unless somebody is going for a very specific color palette. So having said that, it's just a really great way for you to take the primary colors, learn to mix them, and suggest that your customers mix them as well. And it's also a great way for me to learn the paints that I'm working with so that I can more effectively do my work, okay? So having said that, let's go ahead and start swatching out these colors. Let's see, oh, Marquee is our first one. And I did make this little chart. So we've got Marquee here, and Queen Bee and so forth. It just kind of goes all the way down. So we're just gonna kind of run with that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to swatch out each color in its own square. So Marquee and Marquee come to meet up in this little square here. So I'm just going to swatch out that color. It's a lovely brick red, or farmhouse red, I should say. Okay, and we're just going to do that for every single one of these colors. I do rinse my brush in between each use. All right, so let's begin with our first color mixing. Marquee meets Queen Bee in this box right here. So we're gonna pick up a little bit of Marquee. Now obviously for these little testers, you do not need a ton of paint. So we have Marquee and we have Queen Bee. And by using a palette knife, we're not wasting a ton of paint in the actual bristles of our brush. So now we know it makes this lovely, almost terracotta rust color. That's a very popular color. It's a lovely earth tone. All right, next up we have Marquee and Hay Sailor. And that is a really, really pretty deep purple, almost like a really deep eggplant. Now I should note that some of these colors are like ridiculously cool when you've mixed them. Sorry, I'm just grabbing a piece of scratch paper here. When you've mixed them and added a little bit of white to them. So we know Hay Sailor and Marquee are absolutely beautiful together, but if you add just a smidge of white, you end up with this absolutely gorgeous lavender, almost lilac color. So it's one of those things where it's worth it to play around with your paints just to better understand what you get out of them. Our next one is Farm Fresh and Marquee. That's a really pretty color as well. Definitely like a deep mauve color. And again, if I mixed white into that, I have a feeling I would get a really lovely little pink. So we'll do some White Swan just to kind of see. So pretty. It's a little on the dusty mauve side, so really pretty soft pastel color there. Okay, so this next one is Marquee and Black Velvet. And that's going to give us kind of like a currant, it's a little on the like the dark raisin side, deep maroon, maybe even like borderline brown. Our next one is White Swan and Marquee. Definitely a pretty rose color. So we have some really, really awesome color variations just from using those 6 colors already. And I should note, I'm not going to do any of these down here. You're essentially repeating the same thing. I could if I wanted to add white to every mixture though. Okay, so we've got Queen Bee and Hey Sailor. And if you have to switch out your color palette, go clean it off in between, you totally can. When I rinse my brush, I always dry it so that I'm not coming in with like a super wet brush too. So that kind of helps. All right, Hey Sailor and Queen Bee are a gorgeous, gorgeous green. Queen Bee and Farm Fresh. That's definitely on the bronzy side. So kind of like a green gold bronze. I know it's not everybody's favorite, but it's one of my favorite greens. I love painting with that color. All right, so we're gonna do Queen Bee and Black Velvet next. I'm gonna go with a pretty decent amount of the Queen Bee because I know the black is gonna kind of take over. You get to decide just how much you have of a color, you know what I mean? So I know offhand that if I have more yellow versus black, it's gonna actually give me like a really, really deep olive green. It's a fantastic color. And again, if I wanted to mix white into this, you're gonna get even more wonderful greens as well. So let me just rinse my brush. I'll come back in with that same swatch sheet. This is White Swan mixed into Black Velvet mixed with Queen Bee. And it's gonna give me almost like a sagey green. So really, really nice. And I know that when you're buying paint, it's really kind of challenging to find the colors you're going for, because more times than not, you're like, I don't want a true red. I don't want a true blue. I want this. And that's why the color mixing is so important. It really shows you how to use your products more effectively. White Swan and Queen Bee are next. Pretty butter yellow. We knew what that was going to give us anyway, right? That wasn't far from what we would expect. Next up is Hey Sailor and Farm Fresh. Farm Fresh is a really pretty color. I do find that it kind of comes, it's a little on the transparent side. So sometimes that means that you're gonna have to do like 2 to 3 coats of it. So I'm adding a bit more to the Hey Sailor because it's kind of getting lost in there. So that's Hey Sailor and Farm Fresh, and it's giving us almost a Prussian blue color. Very pretty, a little bit more on the gray side, very cool. Next up is Hey Sailor and Black Velvet. Yeah, that's not going to be a hard one to know. You're either going to end up with like a deep indigo or like a really, really charcoaly color. Gorgeous, gorgeous midnight blue. Very, very deep. Not black, blue, black, borderline. All right, Hey Sailor and White Swan. Pretty straightforward there. Farm Fresh and Black Velvet. Again, we already know that the Farm Fresh is a little on the transparent side, so I'm going to do more of that than I do of the black. And again, that's taking over quite a bit, so I'll come in and add just a little bit more Farm Fresh just to have some variety. We already know that black is going to darken every color we use, so we just want an idea of what that's going to give us with a truer like 1-to-1 ratio. And it's giving me a really pretty smoky gray. So as long as you've got like 2-to-1 with that Farm Fresh and Black Velvet, I think you should end up getting the smoky color versus like the true charcoal that it wants to give you. Farm Fresh and White Swan. Trying to figure out where there's no wet paint on the palette here. Super, super pretty. Very, very French. With a little bit of yellow thrown into that, you'd get a gorgeous robin's egg. Okay, so let's swap out here. I say swap, but I really do mean swatch. All right, so because I have a little bit of this color left over, I'm going to throw in a little bit of Queen Bee just to see what that gives me. Oh, yummy. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Super pretty color. It's a very, very French green. Love that. Okay, so that was Farm Fresh, White Swan, and a little bit of Queen Bee. So like you would have to be very, very careful with your Queen Bee because you could quickly go a lot greener than that. But fun options, right? And then of course you've got your Black Velvet and your White Swan. That's pretty straightforward. It's definitely going to give me another gray option. Let's do heavier on the white swan so that it does give us a softer gray. That way we kind of see. Oh, interesting. It's even a little bit on the lilac-y side, you guys. Very pretty. So there you guys have it. Some really, really awesome color combinations with those paints. I'll take a really good picture because when I'm painting in the studio, the lighting is always so dark in here. So I'll give you a better picture of that. And our next step, now that we've learned how to do this, is we're going to paint some fun little evergreen trees. As we're heading into Christmas, it seems appropriate into winter and Christmas season. So we'll definitely look at this and kind of play around with our color choices. I really dig Farm Fresh by itself, so I think what I'll probably do is a base of Farm Fresh, and then I'll come in with a variety of trees using these 3 greens. So it'll be easy. I know I can use my Queen Bee with my Hey Sailor, Farm Fresh, and Black Velvet, okay? So that's your color mixing for now. Be sure to pop back on for the next video. That will be our winter and evergreen trees. Thanks for joining me, guys. And again, this was DIY Paint by Debbie. So if you're curious about the paints, that's what I'm using. And this lesson was sponsored by Liza Jane and her absolutely delightful little shop. You guys can find her here on this little card. I'll also pin her on the YouTube comments so that you guys have access to her directly. So thanks for joining me. Have a great afternoon.